Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Cozy fantasy books, fan fiction being published, people on TikTok being angry about there being too many words on a page. Those are just some of the fun and weird trends that we have seen in the bookish space in the past year. Since it's the end of 2024, I thought it would be fun to look back on trends in publishing, reading, TikTok, and just chat about them and discuss them a little bit and think about which one of these trends we should maybe leave in 2024 and not take with us to the next year. I did this last year and I feel like this year there's just many trends of which I'm like, we can leave them. I asked you guys on Instagram to send me some bookish trends for me to talk about. So of course these are not all the bookish trends that are out there in the world, but just a small collection of ones that I could think of and that you guys could think of. Let's start with what I'd like to call a published reylo fanfiction. So reylo is Rey and Kylo Ren. It is a very popular pairing in Star Wars, the Star Wars fandom, that has tons of very fervent fan fiction writers behind it that write reylo fan fiction. And there has been a bit of a trend in publishing where a lot of these like big name reylo fan fiction writers had their fan fictions published, you know, changing the story a little bit, changing the names, and now it's a normal book. The most well-known one is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood was a huge reylo fanfiction writer, and pretty much everything she writes is in some way an alternate universe reylo fanfiction. Now, I think I'm coming in controversial when I say that I don't actually mind this. The reylo ship is just a very popular dynamic because Kylo Ren is this like surly, tall, brooding villain character, and then Rey often is just more like sunshiny, hardworking woman. And they're always enemies to lovers, which is also just a very popular dynamic. At this point, it's just a trope and not really like plagiarism of the Star Wars fandom. If you know anything about the fanfiction space, you know that popular ships and popular fandoms can really start having a mind of their own and living their own lives, and the characters kind of taking on this new persona within the fandom that is already a little bit different from the original source material. And then it gets changed even more when it's turned into a published novel. So you're changing so much, the characters start living their own lives, and there's plenty of fan fiction that is very well written. So just because something started out as fan fiction doesn't mean that it's automatically a bad book. Also, I think this is the moment that I have to admit that I also kind of ship Kylo Ren and Rey, so I may be biased. Something that was mentioned a lot was the trend of anti-intellectualism. And this is referring to some kind of recent drama where a lot of people on TikTok, on booktok, started talking about how they often skip paragraphs or only read dialogue, or there was a girl that was complaining about there being too many words on the page.
First of all, the writing is so tiny. Second of all, why are the pages so filled with so many words? Like, what the fuck? I like pages that aren't filled with this many words. Like, literally every page is like, look at this.
And there was just this whole trend of people being like, you know, I don't want the paragraphs to be too long. I want it to be easy to read. If it's too hard to get through, I will just start skipping parts. Okay, on the one hand, I don't think there's any reason for us to police what other people do with their hobbies. I don't think that you can do a hobby wrong. And pretending that you can is only going to decrease people's joy. And in this case, decrease people's joy in reading, which is already sad because I'm already happy that people are finding joy in reading, a hobby that a lot of people don't really have anymore. And I firmly believe that a hobby should first and foremost be fun. Not everything that you do needs to be productive. Not everything that you do needs to be, you need to be good at it. If you are bad at drawing, I think you can still have drawing as your hobby. It really shouldn't matter. And telling people that they're doing their hobby wrong is just taking out the element of play, which is the fun part of a hobby, is that it's playful. It is something you do without any stress or demands or needing to be productive or good at it. Also, I've noticed in the way people talk about this skipping paragraphs problem on TikTok is it's kind of become this like huge panic of people being like, oh my gosh, look at these stupid women on TikTok, they're not even reading, which is just further pushing like the popular frame that people on TikTok aren't real readers, and all these girls, these young women that are reading, they're not real readers. We shouldn't take them seriously. BookTok sucks, blah blah blah, while no one ever talks about the really amazing women that make really amazing content on TikTok. That being said, I do think it's a little bit ridiculous. I don't want to fall into the trap of being like, look at these stupid women on TikTok. And again, you do you when it comes to your hobbies. But I do think it's good to ask, why is this happening? Because obviously, as someone who likes to read and who has a book YouTube channel, I don't think it's good that people are just speeding through books, not paying attention to what is actually on there when the book is even like slightly difficult to read. I think one of the underlying problems is that there is this need to read as much as possible, especially in online book communities like TikTok. There can be this pressure to read like tons and tons and tons of books so you can make more content about them, and that can unfortunately lead people to start skipping parts. It's also okay to struggle with the book sometimes and really sit with it and try to make your way through it. And it's fun, I think, and good to sit with the story for a while and really let it sink in, you know? I'm always an advocate for being critical about the books that you read. And reading critically can be part of the fun of reading. Thinking about the characters, thinking about what's going on in the plot. So yeah, I do think we should leave this idea of like just speeding through books, leaving it behind when it's no longer fun. We should leave that in 2024. And in 2025, we're going back to engaging critically with the stories that we read and taking our time with books. Also, many of you mentioned the trend of labeling books with just their tropes. So like saying this is an enemies to lovers, sunshine, small town romance. I have an entire video about that. If you want to know my opinion on it. The same goes for the romantasy trend. I also have an entire deep dive video on that, so I will link both of those videos so you can watch them. Now here we are looking back at a year of trends. Let's look back on the year in a different way, okay? A year of creativity, because this video is also sponsored by Skillshare. So the past year, my goal was to be more creative and have more fun illustrating on my iPad. And honestly, I think I've made so many fun little drawings and I've been having so much joy with this hobby. And one thing that really helped me get ideas and also understand digital illustration more were the classes on Skillshare. They have tons of classes about using Procreate on an iPad that I found very useful, and they really helped me bring my ideas to life. But Skillshare has something for whatever it is that you want to learn. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. They have classes on journaling, writing, social media marketing, illustration, anything. Skillshare will help you go from beginner to pro in no time. I've had a wonderful year full of creativity, and you can also spark your creativity by joining Skillshare. And I have a wonderful deal for you guys. The first 500 people to click the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today and click the link in my description. So last year, we also already talked about the cozy fantasy trend, but this year especially, there has been like a subcategory of the cozy fantasy trend where every book, or not, it's not just like fantasy, sometimes it's also just romance. They're all about cafes or bookshops. Anytime I go into a bookstore, there will be a table that is just filled with books that have cafe or bookshop in the title somewhere, or shop, some kind of shop. It's everywhere. I think this shows that people just have this kind of romantic longing for stories about small communities. You know, the small cafe at the corner of your street, a little bookshop down the lane. This romanticization of like the small business versus the large corporations that we all hate. It's a romanticization of communal living, you know, Gilmore Girls vibes, which I do really like, and I think that says a lot about us. And same, I also totally understand why we have this hang towards, you know, less individualism and more communal living. I just think it feels so forced. I feel like you can't just slap a cafe and a library and a cat into your story and then expect it to actually have the heart of a cozy story, right? Cozy is a carefully curated vibe, but these kind of books just feel really soulless to me. A good cozy fantasy or cozy romance has like actual themes of community, of slowing down, characters that are fleshed out, but in a way just regurgitating these same tropes over and over again to like mass produce these cozy fantasy books, to me is like antithetical to what these books are trying to be about. Stop commodifying and mass producing the idea of escaping mass production. Like, why are we mass producing the idea of escaping mass production? Something going wrong there. Which brings us to the next trend, and that is just the like cozy everything. Not just cozy fantasy. It is cozy romance, cozy mystery, cozy crime, cozy games. Everything nowadays needs to be cozy. And again, I think this signals that we have this intense need to escape, an intense need for soothing stories. And I don't really blame anyone for this. Like, I get it, the world is on fire, we're always busy, and in your downtime you just kind of want to turn off your brain. It makes sense. I don't want to blame individual people and be like, people have become so stupid, but I think we're all just so overworked and overwhelmed all the time that when we do have time for ourselves, we just want stories that are soothing and don't require too much energy and too much of our brain. And I think that's really sad. I think that's a sad reality. Do I think we need to leave the cozy trend behind? I mean, look at my channel. I, as a person, and like all aboard the cozy train. I have nothing against cozy. The cozy trend should not turn into just easy to read, no brain trend. And it's kind of becoming that. So that's why I'm saying let's change it up a bit and actually go back to the heart of cozy. The next trend that a lot of you guys mentioned was after the US elections, a lot of people were like, keep politics out of books. I read for escapism. Let's not talk about politics when it comes to our online book communities. Well, okay, here's the thing. Usually when people start complaining about there being too much politics in books, what that really means is that they are now encountering political opinions that they themselves disagree with. Because almost all, like, let's talk about fantasy for a second, because that's kind of my bubble. Almost all fantasy books are political in some way. You cannot pick up a romantasy book nowadays, a popular romantasy book, that is all about girl power, right? Where the love interest is this like feminist man that wants to make the girl his queen, you know? And there's a focus on empowering the female main character and her being really strong. That's a political message. That's a feminist message. So if you say that you're okay with that, but then the moment books start being about exploring racism, suddenly the books are getting too political. Hey, most fantasy books include wars or uprisings. That is political. Politics is about society and the people in it. Stories are about made up societies and the people in it. They're about power differences and villains versus good guys. That is a reflection in some way of our own society. Almost every book is political in some way, so I don't think you can say, oh, we should keep politics out of books. If you're not fun at parties like me, you can make anything about politics. Okay, something a little bit more, a little bit lighter. The trend of super weird, smutty books about inanimate objects. There was this little trend on TikTok where people were finding romance books about a woman that gets into it with her door. And I think there was one about like a pillow and a pumpkin spice latte. Just these like satirical, spicy novels. I think they're hilarious. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and in a way I do genuinely think it kind of takes away a little bit of the shame around sex, because a lot of people are just kind of talking about it and reading it for fun. I do think it's a gimmicky trend, so I don't think we're gonna see much of it the next year, so I'm sad to say goodbye to it, but I had a lot of fun watching videos of people reading these books. Okay, a lot of people mentioned the trend of selling a book as a TikTok book or a TikTok sensation, or these little stickers. You know, sometimes when you buy a book, there's a sticker on it that's like the new TikTok sensation. Something being a TikTok book is now widely used as a marketing trick to sell a book. I've always wondered, when is a book a TikTok sensation? Because I feel like every book nowadays is a TikTok book. It kind of doesn't really have anything to do with TikTok anymore. It's just whenever a book becomes kind of popular, that automatically means that people are gonna be making videos about it on TikTok, which makes the book a TikTok book, but it was already a popular book. You know what I'm saying? I feel like when they say like, this is a TikTok book, what it really means is this book is popular among young people. I don't really care for it. If it works, it works. I'm not against it. Some people get angry when you label certain books as TikTok books because they're like, what? You're calling Sally Rooney a TikTok book, but Sally Rooney is actually good. Yeah, and she's popular among people who are on TikTok. Both things can be true. Publishers officially publishing previously indie published books. I'm thinking of The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I'm thinking of A Dowry of Blood. I'm thinking of everything published by Olivia Blake. Something interesting that is happening is that indie books can become really popular on TikTok and therefore gain a lot of mainstream success, and then publishers start noticing these indie books and then publishing them traditionally. Now, I really like that there's more appreciation for indie published authors, right? The thing about the publishing industry is that sometimes books just kind of slipped through the cracks, especially if there are books that don't really fit kind of the general mainstream thing that publishers think will work. People might actually still really like it, and because of TikTok, these indie publishers can still become really big. And I think when some of these indie authors like Olivia Blake or Carissa Broadman become really big, and publishers decide to give them a contract anyway, this could just be a good thing because publishers have a lot more like marketing and editing power to put behind the author. Of course, I hope that the indie authors in question get a really good deal out of it and that it's also beneficial to them. I don't know the details of it, but I just think that generally it's nice. Ooh, another trend, especially in romance novels, is using Taylor Swift song titles as the book title. We have book titles like Never Ever Getting Back Together, All Too Well, Champagne Problems, Enchanted to Meet You, This Is Me Trying. A few of these books really have a lot of rating, so I wonder if it works. It seems to be a bit of a trend, so I really think this will blow over. And I wonder if you're like a big Swiftie, maybe it can feel like bait to you, but on the other hand, it could also just be that there's a lot of Swifties working in publishing that are just having fun with these book titles. Either way, I honestly don't really care about it. Ooh, a lot of you guys told me, and I didn't know about this, that cowboy romances are really all the rage right now. I feel like last year we had the ice hockey romances, and although sports romances and ice hockey romances are still big right now, it seems like cowboy romances are like the next big thing. I haven't read any of them, but I think like these romance trends, they kind of come and go, right? Aren't cowboy romance and sports romance like two very typical romance tropes that have been around for decades? Like your typical Harlequin romance tropes. And these like typical Harlequin romance tropes are just slowly finding their way to TikTok. I think that's what's going on. So based on that, I think we can make a prediction of what the next big romance trend is gonna be on TikTok. My bets are on either medical romances. That's a huge traditional romance trope, and I haven't really seen people getting hyped about that on TikTok yet. So I think the medical romance, you know, little, ooh, doctor, what are you doing? Maybe that's next. Or historical romances, you know, like the bodice rippers. We could bring that back, but only if we also bring back the cool covers. I love those 80s romance covers. Speaking about covers, many people have complained about the illustrated / childish, your guys' words, covers for very spicy books. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, very spicy, like erotic novels used to have covers with like half-naked men on them, which very clearly signals this is an erotic book. But nowadays, almost every single romance book has the same type of cover, this kind of illustrated cutesy cover. So for example, Tessa Bailey, who's a very popular romance author, this is what her covers looked like back in the day of her older novels, and this is what her most recent novels look like. Same thing for Talia Hibbert. This is what her older books look like. This is what her newer books look like. I personally massively prefer the illustrated covers. I kind of like that they're discreet. Like most people, I feel just a little bit uncomfortable having books around the house with like half-naked people on them. And I actually kind of like the illustration style. I know that's unpopular opinion, but I kind of do. The problem, of course, is that all romance novels look the exact same now. There is no difference between young adult romance covers and adult romance covers, which obviously brings in a problem because of course you don't want your young demographic to accidentally be picking up these like super spicy books. And even within the adult romance space, there is now not really a clear difference between a book that has like maybe one sex scene in it and then a romance novel that is super spicy. Like for example, Icebreaker looks like every other romance book. I haven't read it, but apparently it's super, like has so many spice scenes in it. I never would have guessed that just from the cover. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to make this very clear. I don't think that there is anything wrong with a spicy romance book. I don't think that romance novels that really focus on the spicy vibes are better or worse than romance novels that focus more on the romance. They're just different with a different goal. There are bad spicy books out there, just like there are bad romance books out there. I know a lot of people believe that spice inherently diminishes the value of a romance novel. I don't believe that. You can have a lot of spice in your books and also have it be beautifully written and also focus a lot on the characters and weave in the spice with the themes of the story. You can do that. I don't think that there's anything inherently shallow about spice in a romance novel. That being said, I do think you should be able to tell somehow, right? Book covers are there to signal to the reader what the book is gonna contain. Imagine picking up a book with a sword and roses and a crown on the cover, and then it turns out to be this like hard sci-fi space opera. That's what happens when you pick up a book with this like cutesy cover and then it turns out to mostly be spice. So that's why I say I don't have a problem with these illustrated books, we just need to change them somehow. Again, I vote for bringing back those gorgeous 80s romance covers. I love those. And then last but certainly not least, my favorite titled trend of the past year is the shadow daddy trend. Shadow daddy is like a trope of male love interest where the male love interest has shadow or darkness powers, and he's like this alpha male daddy character. Usually he's immortal or at least 500 years older than our female main character. Now this trope has been around for a while, but the term shadow daddy I think arose last year. I love that we are just calling it that now. I have made a full video deep diving into the shadow daddy trope, so I will also link that if you're interested in that. I had so much fun making that video. Generally speaking, I would say I actually love a shadowy dark villain that's also super hot. What can I say? I can do without the weird age gaps. And also I would like some of these books to maybe address the huge power difference that exists between our immortal shadow wizard and our deer in the headlights female main character. Maybe we can address that power difference, at least acknowledge it for a change. But other than that, if we make those changes, it can stay. Other trends that you guys mentioned a lot that you wanted me to talk about were all the special editions and sprayed edges and luxury editions of books, sports romances and hockey romances, and also, as always, Colleen Hoover. But these trends I already talked about in my video from last year, so book trends that we need to leave in 2023. So if you want to know my opinion on those things, I will also link my video last year in the description. Wow, lots of videos being linked in the description today. I think we can summarize my opinion in this video as, let's all please just be a little bit more critical of what we read. Unless it's a spicy novel about a doorknob. I would love to know your guys' opinions on all of the things that I mentioned today. I'm excited to see what kind of weird bookish things next year is going to bring for us. I want to end this video by thanking my patrons with a special thanks to all of my elite Patreon members and a warm welcome to our newest elite members, Kailani, Elena, and Yoshimitsu. Welcome. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon in another video very soon. Goodbye.